Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So before I get started, I'm going to give people a few minutes to tune in. And this is the video that I meant to do yesterday. I was just so busy, I didn't get around to doing it. So I'm doing it now. Also, I'm going to do another video after this one, at least two videos. One will be about Umar Johnson. I saw it posted he put on Instagram. It was interesting. I plan to respond to that post. Also, Zaza Ali put out a response to the controversy on her Instagram account, and apparently she's deleted it since then. But I still remember the content of that particular post, and I'm going to talk about it briefly in a separate Google Hangout. I'm going to try to search online to see if someone did a screenshot of it, and I'm going to check on YouTube as well. Peace to Hollow Ninja 10. Thanks for tuning in. So let's get started. Now, I know that a lot of you have heard about this Cyntoia Brown case, and that's what I want to do. I want to talk about it. I mentioned it briefly in one of my past Hangouts, but at the time, I didn't get a chance to read a lot of articles about it. I didn't get a chance to watch the documentary about her case. But since then, I've had the time to do so. And I just want to briefly tell you all about the case and tell you what I think about it. And I want to tell you what you all can do to help support this situation. So you have this girl who was 16 years old. She was forced into a life of prostitution. Her pimp went by the name of Cutthroat. This guy was, obviously abusive to her as a pimp. He allegedly put a gun out on her and threatened her on several occasions and basically manipulated her and got her into a prostitution lifestyle, where she was literally selling her body on the street at 16 years old. So one incident happened. This woman, well, actually at the time she was a girl, only 16 years old, on the street, selling her body. And this one man picked her up. This man who was 43 years old, a real estate agent or something like that, he picks her up, instead of taking her to a motel as she wanted to go to, this man decided to take her to his home. And once he took her to his home, he talked to her about what kind of work he does and how important he is, how accomplished he is. And, in this documentary, and I'll include links to all the stories that I relied upon for this particular video, and I'll include a link to the documentary. In the documentary, it talked about how she just wondered, like, what would if something were to happen to her, would anybody even know? Like, this man showed her guns. He showed her 2 shotguns and another gun with a black handle and this chrome, so she felt, allegedly she feared for her safety. She had a lot of fear for her safety. She was concerned. She wondered, like, if this guy posed some kind of threat to her and all that. That's what she claims. And at one point, they're in the house, he tells her that, he served in the military, that he was a sharpshooter and all that kind of stuff. And at one point they're in the bed or something like that, and she says that he grabs her between her legs very hard, and he looks at her very fiercely and stuff. And then he allegedly reaches to the side of the bed, and she fears that he's reaching for a gun, and she proceeds to shoot and kill him. And after she shoots and kills him, she takes his guns, she takes his money, and she takes his car. And then later she's convicted of first-degree murder. She's tried as an adult and convicted of first-degree murder. She's sentenced to life in prison for this, even though she's 16. And, there's been a lot of push on social media for her to get clemency, for her to be freed from jail because of the circumstances of her life. This is a young girl who's 16 years old, forced to be a prostitute, someone who grew up in hard circumstances. Her mother abandoned her, gave her up for adoption. Her mother was, an alcoholic at one point, because even while she was still in the womb, her mother was drinking alcohol, and that caused her to suffer from fetal alcohol syndrome, according to several reports. Now, after, Cyntoia Brown was born, like within 8 months after she was born, her mother got addicted to crack and became a prostitute. So that's something that, that occurred. And then after that happened, she gave her child, Cyntoia Brown, up for adoption. And, she had a new family, raised her and everything like that. Her family, in terms of her biological family, she has a white mother. And her father, I assume that he's Black. They don't show any images of her father. I don't know if he was much a part of her life. They don't really show much about him online or in the documentary. But she grew up in this situation. She's a biracial kid, with a mother strung out on crack, a mother who, abused alcohol before she was even born and conceived. So she suffers from these different problems. Her family has a history of suicide, of, her mother in particular, they were outlining her mother's issues. Her mother is bipolar, suicidal, manic depressive, had thoughts of committing homicide against various people. She also talked about how, her mother witnessed all this violence and stuff like that. So this girl grew up under terrible circumstances. And because of that, she ended up in this situation where she's only 16 years old and she's already into, criminal activity. She's forced to a life of, sex trafficking, living with an abusive pimp. So, all these circumstances need to be taken into consideration when we look at what ultimately happened here. Now, after listening to, these documentaries and reading the various articles about this story, I don't think that she was innocent of the crime. I think that she definitely did intend to kill this man. And it's unclear, like, whether or not she really was acting in self-defense, because in this documentary, they show actual photographs of this man's body and the position of his body. His hands are close together right near his face, and he has his fingers interwoven like this, to the side. So it doesn't look like he was reaching for anything at the time when he was shot. And according to the prosecutors, they say that he was asleep at the time when he was shot by this woman. Well, she was a girl at the time, shot by this girl. So I don't believe that she necessarily was acting in self-defense, at the time when she killed him. She says that she was nervous. She said that he was acting bizarre and stuff like that. But it's hard for me to believe that she was acting in self-defense when I look at the position of his body. He was on the bed. His hands were interwoven, as I said before. They were under his head, like near his head. So it wasn't like he was shot in a position where he's reaching over the bed, under the bed or something like that, or, has one hand extended. That would substantiate, her story. And then, we also have to bear in mind that there was an actual trial in this case. You had a jury that listened to all the evidence. They had a chance to consider, all the different allegations, investigate the evidence. They had a chance to hear from experts and hear from the police. And they concluded that she did not act in self-defense. And I don't think that that can just be brushed aside and we can take some narrative after the fact to say, well, she was definitely acting in self-defense. I don't know if she was acting in self-defense. And based on what I see, it doesn't appear that she was necessarily acting in self-defense. But that alone, doesn't cause me, to say, well, we shouldn't be advocating for her. And I'll explain that a little bit further in this video. Another thing that doesn't support this claim of self-defense is the fact that she stole his weapons, she stole his money, and she stole his car. That doesn't support the narrative of self-defense. Now, the prosecutors say, well, she her intent was to basically rob this guy. Like she didn't have any intent to, to have some just a sexual transaction, money for sex, and that be that. She intended to rob him. That's what the prosecution claims. And when you look at what actually happened, that's a feasible and logical type of conclusion for someone to reach, given the fact that she did in fact steal his weapon. She did in fact steal his money and his car. So that makes, that undermines the whole claim of self-defense. But even, if she did not act in self-defense, I don't believe that she should have been sentenced to life for a number of reasons. And I don't think that the Tennessee Supreme Court's decision to have her serve 51 years before eligibility for parole, I don't think that that's correct either. And I'm going to explain to you why. Like, first of all, she shouldn't have been charged as an adult. Like, she was only 16 at the time. She shouldn't have been sentenced to life. There's a Supreme Court case, and I'm going to look at these notes real briefly right here. It's Miller versus Alabama, which basically says that it's unconstitutional to sentence a juvenile to life, to a life sentence, for a variety of reasons. First of all, they say it violates the 8th Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual treatment. And the reason why that's very important is because juveniles, as noted in the case, have a diminished capability, of making certain decisions. They have diminished culpability. Children lack a certain maturity. They lack a certain level of development and a certain level of a sense of responsibility. Often children engage in reckless behavior. They're impulsive and they're heedless of risk. They don't keep in mind the various risks that they face, and they're more vulnerable to outside influence. These are things that are noted in Miller versus Alabama and a lot of related cases that deal with juveniles and criminal sentencing. It's just fundamentally cruel to sentence someone that's only 16 years old for a disastrous decision that they made as a child. I mean, 51 years for a horrible decision that someone makes as a child, it's just fundamentally wrong for her to be sentenced for such an extended period of time, especially given the circumstances, given the fact that this was a girl who was abandoned. Her mother was a crack addict. She suffers from fetal alcohol syndrome. She has abandonment issues. Her family has a long history of different mental issues and, emotional issues and all those things. All of that should be taken into account. The fact that she had this pimp who was dominating her life. And that's one thing that has to be pointed out. Like, she said that she feared, like, going back to her pimp empty-handed. This is a man who choked her to the point where she passed out, according to her. This is a man who threatened her with guns and stuff like that. So she says that she was fearful to leave this man's house without money, without, something to prove that she, fulfilled her duties, because she would fear that, the pimp would abuse her if she didn't come back with money. So that's part of her story. So, just the circumstances of everything, the level of abuse that she went through. And the fact that she is sentenced, so harshly, 51 years, and she's already served like 13 or 14 years so far. She's paid a debt to society. And I think that it's time for her to be granted with clemency. I think that the governor should grant her clemency. And, for those of you who don't know, this incident took place in Nashville, Tennessee. The governor is considering granting her clemency, and I think that he should, because, this issue of sex trafficking needs to be addressed. It's not dealt with. People like her are the victims in this situation. Here you have a young girl who was manipulated into becoming a prostitute, due to her family circumstances and all that kind of stuff. And here you have a man that is 40-something years old having sex with a 16-year-old girl. So, all this stuff needs to be taken into consideration. You know, is it possible that she feared for her safety and acted the way she did? Yeah, it's possible. But for the reasons that I said before, I don't think that you know, that the self-defense claim is the strongest claim. But, you know, even putting that aside, you know, her age at the time, you know, the circumstances that led her to this life of crime need to be considered. And also we need to look at the fact that she has uh, rehabilitated herself to a large degree. You know, she completed her GED while in jail. You know, again, completed her GED while in jail. She completed her associate's degree, and she's close to completing her her bachelor's of arts. You know, her BA. So, you know, and as far as I know, you know, there haven't been issues with her while she's been incarcerated. She's had a good record while incarcerated. And I think that instead of like throwing away this young person's entire life over a horrible decision that they made, you know, perhaps, you know, she should be granted clemency, you know, so she can get a second chance to live a better life and to become a role model for other girls who are caught up into that particular lifestyle. You know, she could serve as like a mentor or somebody that inspires others and encourages others. And from what I understand, she's doing some of that now, even though she's still sentenced to life. I mean, not life. She's sentenced to 51 years now. You know, so initially she was serving life, and then you know, there was a hearing at the Tennessee Supreme Court, and they decided that, you know, they would give her 51 years before she's eligible for parole. Now that's virtually a life sentence. You know, here she is, you know, serving. She's spent like 13 years in jail. And like by the time she would be eligible for parole, she would be like 60 something years old, um, which is crazy, man. And this whole thing just makes me think about the power of celebrity. And I'll get to your comments in a second as soon as I get a free moment, as soon as I finish these brief closing remarks. You know, this whole thing is a reminder of the power of celebrity. You know, the only reason why a lot of people have been talking about this case is because of, you know, primarily two celebrities. One is Rihanna and the other one is Kim Kardashian. And it's just a shame that it has to be celebrities that bring attention to these kind of issues. You know, this issue should have been brought to the public's attention through policymakers, you know, through politicians who are there in Tennessee, or through members of Congress. That's how it should have been brought to the people's attention. But, you know, you have these celebrities that raise the issue, they raised the concern, and because of that, it received a lot of attention. Like these celebrities have far more followers and supporters than any elected officials. And that's just the reality of the situation. And they have great influence over great numbers of people. You know, I'm sure Rihanna has millions upon millions of followers. The same is true for Kim Kardashian. And they can use their platforms for good or for bad. And one thing that they're doing is they've brought attention to this issue. And that's something that is, you know, to be celebrated and to be recognized. And I think that we need more celebrities to bring attention to these criminal justice issues and other issues affecting the Black community, you know, because the people will listen to a celebrity more so than they will listen to a pastor or a politician or to, you know, many, you know, even an activist. They will listen to one of these celebrities before they'll listen to an activist. And that's why these celebrities need to recognize the power that they have and use their voice, you know, and speak truth to power without fear. We need to have more, you know, public figures do so. You know, unfortunately, we can't hold our breath because, you know, most of these entertainers and stuff don't care about the community. You know, they're all about, you know, self-promotion and, you know, self-aggrandizement and all that kind of stuff. But still, we need to, you know, work with these celebrities, you know, lobby these celebrities to bring attention to very important issues. And I think that just like they're bringing attention to this issue involving this sister, you know, calling for her to be freed from jail, we need to have celebrities bring attention to the political prisoners that are still in this country. You know, members of the Black Panther Party who are still incarcerated in this country simply because of their political beliefs. You know, people that are being held as political prisoners and people that are held as prisoners of war. We need to have, you know, not only politicians, but we need to have these celebrities speak out on these issues. So, yeah, and it's like I think that our, you know, these celebrities need to have a sense of responsibility, man. A lot of these celebrities come from the hood. You know, a lot of these, for instance, these rap artists claim that they're representing the hood and this and that, but they don't speak on behalf of the people in the hood. They don't speak for the people that are locked up and caught up in the system. You know, they can do more. And, you know, I just have to commend, you know, uh, Kim Kardashian and Rihanna for bringing attention to this issue. We need more celebrities to do similar type of things. So before I close out, I'm going to go to your comments. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Hollow Ninja 10. Hollow Ninja asks why always live streams. So I'll answer that briefly. Like, I like live streams because it allows me to interact with you all directly, you know, in real time. So you all can comment as I'm, you know, presenting information. There are drawbacks to live streams. You know, for instance, if I did this pre-recorded, you know, I wouldn't have any mistakes and all that kind of stuff. You know, I would make sure, like, if there was a slight error in the way I pronounced something, you know, or if I stumbled over a word, I could go back and correct it, and it'd end up being just right. And the only drawback on that is that when you do videos like that, it loses a certain level of authenticity and spontaneity. So, you know, that's the drawback in doing those recorded videos. Another drawback is, you know, time wasted editing, you know, time wasted, you know, trying to render it and, you know, all that stuff, waiting around for it to upload and all that kind of stuff. It's just easier for me to go live. So from here on out, I'm probably just going to do most of my videos live. And it also gives me a chance to just think on my feet, you know, so as people throw out comments or raise various legitimate questions or, you know, debate my position on the issues, it gives me a chance to, like, to respond to them live, you know, to be spontaneous, to even correct myself. Like, if I'm making a mistake, it allows me to correct myself in real time. It also allows me to strengthen my position and my resolve on my position, you know, my various stance or whatever. So yeah, that's why I'm doing live streams. You know, I really love interacting with y'all live. You know, it's one thing to read comments well after a video is posted. It's quite another thing to read them as you're actually doing the video itself. Yeah, so DJ Wiz said she was cursed since birth. I hope she gets justice. Yeah, I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, before you're even brought into the world, your mother is drinking alcohol, you know, damaging your development before you even come out of the womb. And then when you're 8 months old, your mother's on crack, can't even take care of you. And the thing is, her mother was only 16 years old when she had her. A terrible situation. Like, I mean, and then she was adopted. You know, she claims that her adopted father was physically abusive. That's another thing. So she has an abusive father. You know, she ends up being with this pimp who abuses her. And then she ends up in a situation where she ends up killing somebody. She has all kinds of abandonment issues, trust issues, and various issues involving her development. And it's just a shame that this type of situation would happen, man. And this is not like unusual. You know, we see a lot of kids that are born in these dire circumstances and end up going down, you know, the criminal path, unfortunately. Just bear with me a second. I'm looking at these comments. So Nikki Justice said she's the white man's child. I'll never fight for her. Why is she being advertised? First of all, her mother is white. I think her father is black. And in this society, no matter what these people on YouTube are saying, biracial kids are viewed and treated as black, regardless of what people are saying. And, the biggest example of that is Obama. Every day they reminded him that he was still a black man, despite him being quote unquote biracial, despite him getting a Harvard education, despite him being a U.S. senator and then becoming president. At the end of the day, he was still the N-word. So, these little categories that we put up here on YouTube where we're like, oh, if you're one of your parents is not black, then that means you're automatically not black, you're biracial, you're in some separate category. That's something that exists in your head, but it doesn't exist in the real world. When you're dealing with police, when you're dealing with racial profiling, they treat biracial people the same. And the last thing that we need to do as a people is splinter ourselves up even further than we are already divided. So I'm not one of these people that get with this whole, if you're not 100% black, you're not black. When the fact of the matter is very few of us are 100% African, given the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow and just how, the history of the white man raping our women and, intermarriage, all that kind of stuff. Most of us are not 100% African. So I'm not one of these people that are absolutists or, quote unquote purists, to say, well, if you're not 100% black, you're not black. The fact of the matter is these biracial people are treated as black. They're defined as black. And until very recently, the black community accepted them as black. Some of the greatest figures in black history are quote unquote biracial. So, again, I just beg to differ with these people that want to say, well, if one of your parents is white or something or non-black, then you're automatically non-black. And that's a whole nother topic. I could debate on and on about that. I think that we need to be focused on justice. And that's another thing. Like, even if this was a white girl, a white woman or whatever, did face this kind of sentence, it's still fundamentally wrong. It's still unjust, for somebody that's 16 years old, that committed a crime at that age to be sentenced to life for the reasons that I previously stated. Again, there's case law, that Miller versus Alabama case that basically says it is unconstitutional to sentence a juvenile to life for all the reasons that I previously stated. So it would be wrong regardless. Somebody's whole life should not be thrown away based on a decision that they made as a juvenile. Another thing that they talked about in those line of cases is that juveniles have a greater capacity for rehabilitation than adult criminals. So, we've seen people that have been rehabilitated, people that have gone from being criminals to becoming productive citizens in society. And to say that she's the typical white woman, I mean, I don't see how somebody could reach that conclusion. I mean, that's ridiculous to me. I mean, here you have somebody that is, she's not typical. Like, when you look at the typical white person in the society, like many of them are middle class, live in a 2-parent household and all that kind of stuff. And, she's, first of all, she's not white because one of her parents is black. So, that's a whole nother story. I'm not going to get sidetracked on that. So Nikki Justice says, where's the outrage for black children? There's outrage for black children all the time, especially on this channel. People have been watching this channel. They know that there's outrage for black children all the time over here. I'm talking about, I've done plenty of videos about inner city violence where you have young black people killed in our communities. I've done issues, plenty of videos about the police brutality involving young Black people. I've done videos just dealing with the plight of Black people, period. So to raise that question here is, out of place and out of order, because all I do is talk about my outrage for our people, for the injustices that our people face, whether they're young or old or regardless of their age, whether they're men or women or children. I regularly talk about, the outrageous things that happen to our people. So let's see. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about with democratic agenda. I mean, what does this have to do with democratic agenda? I mean, we're talking about somebody's constitutional rights, to not be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. What does that have to do with a democratic agenda? What's wrong with advocating for people's constitutional rights? I'm not understanding the comments you're raising right now. And no one said, as I said before, nobody said that she's a role model. Obviously she was a prostitute, only 16 years old. Obviously she killed somebody. So obviously she's not a quote unquote role model. But at the same time, she's made changes in her life despite being convicted, despite serving like 13 years in jail. She's gotten an education. She got her GED. She got her associate's degree. And now she's just about finished with her bachelor's degree. And she's been a model, prisoner from what I can tell. Right? There haven't been many reports of, bad behavior in all the years that she's been incarcerated. And my point is this, like this woman has, she's a woman now, she's in her 30s. She has served she served like 13 years. And I think that it's time at this point for her to be granted clemency. Yeah, so B First Intellectual James said, if a biracial Black woman is a victim of white supremacy, she's a Black woman. But if she dates a rapper or basketball player, she's not a Black woman. That's not the case for me. Like, I know that there are double standards, but as far as I'm concerned, biracial people, if you have a Black parent, one of your parents is Black and you identify with your Black heritage, as far as I'm concerned, you're Black. Regardless of what the issue, whether the issue is racism or is dating or relationships, it's the same across the board for me. And anyone that looks at her knows that she's not white. I mean, that's clear and obvious. If you look at this Cyntoia Brown and you see her, it's clear that she's not just white. She's not white. Her mother's white and her father is obviously Black. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I think I made my point. Not going to repeat myself. Yeah, biracial people do have it bad, man, because it's like they face racism from white people, and then they deal with like a lot of narrow-minded Black people that want to ostracize people because they're biracial. I mean, people don't get to choose who their parents are. It's like you ostracize them and then say, well, after they've been ostracized, then you want to condemn them for like turning to white people or whatever. That doesn't make sense to me. And I've heard from biracial people talking about their struggles with identity and stuff. Their struggles getting acceptance, both from white people and from Black people. And DJ Wiz said the same white folks who feel like she deserved that sentence are the same ones who feel like Trayvon Martin deserved to die. And he didn't kill anyone. Exactly. Yeah, so Virgo Life said you don't want most rappers speaking for the hood on political issues. Yeah, not just your average rapper, like somebody that doesn't know, somebody that's ignorant. Obviously, I think that people should be informed about the issues. They should research the issues. They should be enlightened. Like somebody that doesn't have a clue speaking on issues, that's a bad idea, but I think that a lot of these artists, if they are informed about the issues, they can be greater advocates than even, these politicians or these political activists. They should work with activists to convey messages to the masses of the people. Unfortunately, that's the case. Like, we just don't have a mass movement going on right now, like a movement like during the Garvey time period where Garvey had, the largest movement in Black history, like the largest mass movement that we've had in this country. People are not on that level. Like today, like people don't even want to be a part of organizations. People don't want to do like real organizing work. A lot of people are content just following these talking heads on here on YouTube who don't lead you anywhere, who only entertain you. Yeah, but we do need to have them speak on those issues, like political issues, those who are informed, not just any old rapper. So that's a valid point, Virgo Life. Shout out to Water Sniper. Water Sniper said that he prefers for me to do live streams. Yeah, I like live streams for the reasons that I said before. I mean, again, the only thing I hate about them is like the imperfections, like the little imperfections in them, like bother me sometimes. But hey, it is what it is. Yeah, so Nikki Justice said Captain Save a Hole. I don't know if you're referring to me, but like I think that that's preposterous for, to make that kind of claim is, ridiculous, given the arguments that I made before, like throughout this video. And I think people can see that, like people can distinguish between somebody raising legitimate constitutional issues and somebody being a quote unquote Captain Save a Hole. I mean, I think that that's childish type of language. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that that's a intelligent way to debate things. Um, yeah, I could do a whole video on this whole Black people need to stay out of the Democratic Party mantra that you hear on YouTube and stuff like that. My argument to these people is, what's your alternative, man? What do you offer? Where's your political party? I know it's damn sure not the Republican parties because they don't give a damn about Black people. They don't need Black people to win elections, as this other YouTuber pointed out. That's why they have no problem, suppressing your votes and stuff like that. So I know it's not the Republican Party, and we live in a two-party system. Even though you have third-party candidates that run, and I voted for third-party candidates. We know that for the most part, your choice is between two parties. And when you look at the present day history of those two parties, it's a night and day difference. One party is openly hostile to the interests of Black people. Another party at least tries to promote some of our agenda because they have no choice. They know that they can't be elected without Black support. They can't be elected on the state level or the federal level without Black support. And it's time for us to leverage that support. And many people do leverage that support. My question to people that want to say, don't be a Democrat or and all that kind of stuff is like, what alternative do you offer to people? Where's your political agenda? What are your efforts to lobby government to make any kind of change? You know, I just think that too often people are just caught up with these buzzwords and these catchphrases without doing any kind of real analysis of the actual facts. Um, yeah, so I'm done going back and forth on that stuff. I think I, made my points. If you want a channel where we hate all biracials, you're on the wrong channel. Or you hate, anybody talking about like the reality of politics versus the fantasy of politics. You're on the wrong channel. I mean, there are plenty of people that hate biracials here on YouTube that you could go watch. There are plenty of people that don't believe in electoral politics that you could go watch. This is not that channel. I deal in the real world. I don't deal in Fantasy Island. All right, so let's see what people are saying before I sign out. Yeah, you do have people saying, somebody because they're light skinned, they're not black, and all that kind of stuff, man, questioning people. And it's like, it's just ridiculous, man. It's like a form of elitism, within this so-called community of people that are supposed to be conscious, man. If you're really about the people, if you're really about loving black people, you should be about loving all black people, regardless of their complexion and all that kind of stuff. Because that white man is not saying, well, let me not stop him because he's light skinned. They treat all of us virtually the same. We're all subjected to racism in this society. And the last thing we need to do is divide ourselves up along like religious lines, along color lines, along gender lines. We need to be about unity in our community, man. Instead of dividing ourselves up and making our oppressor's job easier. Shout out to King Hebrew. Shout out to Gab Talk Media. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, Psycho, that it does create confusion, like swirling creates issues for the children and stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not like a supporter of it. I'm not one of these people that's going to hate somebody simply because they decided to be with somebody of another race or anything like that. My position is that we should be about black love and, black self-respect and black pride. And we should be with our own. We should naturally prefer to be with our own. But I don't think that we should demonize and, harass people that happen to date or marry interracially. Now, if they get on here and they're encouraging that and they're, discouraging black men from being with black women and vice versa, then I have an issue with them. Then I will challenge them every time in these videos, challenge their, white supremacist talking points. Yeah, yeah, Psycho. These live streams are just easier, man. They're quicker instead of like doing all that editing and stuff, man. So yeah, I feel you. I agree with that. Yeah, so the bottom line is, I'm encouraging people to sign the petition calling for clemency for Cyntoia Brown. Free Cyntoia Brown. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you for joining this live stream. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. I will be doing a follow-up live stream. I'll be following this story, but I'll also be doing a couple of live streams immediately after this. And then I have to get to writing. I'm on vacation right now, so I'm spending time writing. And I plan to, I'm working on a book. So once everything's finalized, I will be making announcements here on my channel, letting y'all know how you can purchase it. My goal is to have it done before the end of next year. So look out for that. Oh, so Fresh and Sassy wants to know if I could do a live about Donald Trump not visiting Baltimore. Yeah, I'm going to look into that. I may do that. So look out for that. And, thanks for that suggestion. So peace and blessings, everyone. I'll see you on the next live stream shortly. Peace.